Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Shannon. This is Made by Boo, and I actually don't have a lot of projects to talk about today. I am recording today from a little bit outside of Boise, Idaho, as usual, and I was traveling recently. We'll talk about it a little bit more later, but while I was traveling, I had kind of condensed some of my projects down. And so I'm almost done with most of my projects and have not quite gotten to starting new ones. So I have 2 finished objects, 1 work in progress, 1 failed start, and plans for another one. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. I will start with the simplest finished object first, a pair of socks. So this pair, I have not blocked them yet. I have not woven in the toes. I always knit over the end, so it's really just the little end at the toes. And then I still have my stitch markers in. Most of these of here I did not bother, so they might be slightly different lengths on the leg, but I just went by the number of stripes, and honestly, I mean, they do line up pretty well along the sides, so I think they're the same length. But I did count the rows for the toe, so I'm getting ahead of myself. This is a pair of self-striping socks from Nomadic Yarns, and it is the color Heatwave on the twisty sock base. It did not come with the yellow here. The yellow here I had left over from a Muse 2320 it was a Christmas countdown. I want to say it was maybe Little Red Riding Hood, or To Grandmother's House We Go. It was from 2023. And I had made a shawl and left a few of the colors out, which included this yellow. And I put a few of the different mini skeins that I had with it. And the yellow went really well with the Heatwave. I think I personally would have liked it better if I'd had a purple or a navy, because these are very, very yellow. But self-striping socks were on my bingo card for the year, so I will try to talk about my bingo card as we get to the end of everything. If I forget, that just kind of seems par for the course, but yeah, finished pair of socks. I just need to weave in the toes, pull out the markers, and block them. I don't really have a ton to say. I did 1x1 ribbing for the... Oh my gosh, 1x1 ribbing for the ribbing is all I can think of. For the cuff, there we go. And then everything was just kind of a vanilla sock pattern, heel flap and gusset, nothing special on the heel. And then I did a rounded toe. I didn't have a lot of my mini skein left, but I just didn't really care either about... I don't like doing the stripes on the heel because it messes with the stripe pattern in the sock. And so because of that, I decided to go ahead and do the cuff too. But, I mean, the stripe pattern on the heel is fine. So yeah, 1 finished pair of socks. Most of the time if I'm talking about socks, I know I don't really have a lot interesting to say about them because I do mostly vanilla socks with a very similar pattern. So I feel like it does get a little repetitive. But the next thing I have that is a finished object is not a pair of socks. I have completed my Bay Day tank. So both the pattern and the yarn for this are by the Little Wolf Knits. And this color was from the Wolfpack collection. It is the color River Run. And this is something that I worked on a ton while traveling. I had started those socks thinking that I would work on them largely in the car. And I ended up driving most of the way home instead of being a passenger for most of the drive home. So I didn't get as much knitting time on that for the way home. But I have already blocked it, and honestly, I had accidentally knocked the marker about where I was last time out anyways, but I was somewhere around up here-ish. And so I don't want to give too much away about the pattern, but there is some waist shaping, and I was around the waist shaping when I got to California, and I just was able to go through while visiting with family, do all the waist shaping, and got all the way to the bottom where it was there's some shaping at the bottom as well. And I once I got it to where I thought it was going to be long enough, I stopped so that I could come home and put it on cords and try it on before I did the bottom. And then after that, I just had to do the finishing up here. I kept these kind of minimal because it's really just to kind of give it a little bit of finish. And yeah, I'm very happy with how it turned out. I actually have not tried it on since I blocked it, so I'm going to try it on right now, and then we'll kind of see how it goes. All right, so I'm going to do my best to show it. I don't have a good screen to see what is being recorded or not. You can see it didn't really say how long to go in the pattern. On her, it was kind of cropped. I am not really a cropped person, so I just wanted it to go where it would kind of meet my pants. These are just sweatpants right now, but I'm home today. And I think normally for me, I would definitely wear something that covers a little more on the shoulder. But that's because mostly I don't wear like tank tops at work or anything. I think we might actually have a part of our dress code that says we can't, but I typically don't. I know you can tell by my tan lines that I don't wear a lot of tank tops, but I do really, really like the fit. There was a little part like under here where there was some shaping, and I feel like my short rows and double stitches were not quite as tight as they could have been, but that's definitely something for next time. I do really like it. I definitely think I'll have to get used to like actually wearing it just as a tank top, because again, I don't wear tank tops very often since I don't wear them to work, but it is also lightweight enough, and I went with the browns and everything of River Run because I figured it would go underneath other stuff very well. I can definitely see myself wearing this at work under like a light cardigan or something, and then it's comfortable to wear again later. So very, very happy with it. I was thinking about making another one while doing it, but it's not going to be like one of my next projects, so we'll see if I end up doing it again. She does have a couple of other tank tops. She was even looking for testers in my size, but the particular tank top she was looking for testers in my size wasn't my favorite of her tank tops, so it was like, yeah, I'd want to make it and make a few changes to it, so probably not best for testers. And I have considered purchasing some of her other ones. I usually like a little bit lower of a neck, but like, again, I don't want it like too low, but the collar, where it's just some collar ribbing, it did say to make it a little higher, but I don't like a really high neck, so I made it a little shorter, and I think it turned out fine. Yeah, not a lot left to say other than I'm really happy I made it. I am going to change back into my t-shirt, but that's partially just so that I can save this to wear later instead of having two shirts dirty today. All right, so that is my two finished objects, and as I said, I only have one work in progress right now. It is in the bag that all of the socks were in. I had 2 pairs of socks technically in this bag for traveling. I say technically because the striped socks that I was traveling with, I was doing in tandem, and this one I am not, so it's only one sock. And yeah, I had really cut down on the number of projects, trying not to start projects I wouldn't have time to work on, and I just have not quite started the new projects yet. It's really strange for me. So this is a single sock so far. It is using yarn from Always Be Kind Yarn in the color black, white, and rainbow all over on a DK sparkle base. So this is DK socks, and I am doing the Vanilla is the New Black sock pattern. I did make a couple of little changes. I think they may call for a 2x2 rib, and I just did a 1x1. And then I did my leg pretty short ahead of time because when I have done DK socks in the past, I always feel like I am running low on yarn when I get to the end, and I only had the one skein, which should be enough for another sock. Have not waited or anything, but I'm not quite done with the first sock yet even. So I did 10 rounds on the rib. I did, I think technically 11 rounds because I did mess up on the heel the first time and I read it wrong, where it was like a 2 2 rows or 2 rounds for everything, and I was only doing 1. It's a paid for pattern, so of course I don't want to give away too much information about it, but it was supposed to be, I ended up making it like half as deep as I should. So when I had to pull it back, I accidentally ended up with an extra row up here, which is fine. But yeah, it's got what is known as the strong heel. This is literally the only pattern I have ever worked this in. So I don't know what it's in other ones, but I've done a couple pairs of these socks in the past. One fingering weight and another DK weight. And I just kind of liked it. Figured for a DK pair of socks it'd be fun. I do need to do a little bit more on the foot before I get to the toe. And I will probably do a rounded toe just because that's what I tend to do the most of. Honestly, when I'm doing this pattern, mostly what I'm looking for is the starting number of stitches and how to do the heel and the gusset on the bottom. And then the rest of it I'm just kind of doing similar to my vanilla sock pattern. So I only have 1 sock so far. I do really love the way that these colors are working up. And yeah, not a lot else to say on that. It is going to be my 1 pair of socks that I'm working on, probably my on-the-go knitting because it's through the heel. When it's in the heel, it's a little harder for me to work on the go just because it's a pattern, but it's still not as difficult as some other projects would be to work on the go. So the other project that I kind of have is my semi-failed project. So, this yarn is supposed to be in this bag. This was going to be a shawl. And I had talked about it, I want to say last week, for potential projects to work on. And I wasn't sure that this was the one I was really excited about right now because I was a little concerned about how it would go out. But I have some, this is from Fangirl Fibers, and this was a Christmas set. And then I had added a couple other colors to it. So these are completely untouched so far. This color is Whoville. And this is Stink, Stank, Stunk. And it was a How the Grinch Stole Christmas themed set. It came with a pattern to do color work socks. And I'm not that big on color work. Did not want to do color work socks that may or may not fit correctly. And I figured I'd find something to do for it at some point. And my daughter pointed out it made her think of a watermelon when they were just sitting there on the shelf. So the thought was I was going to do a half circle shawl that would look like a slice, like a wedge of watermelon. I know most people would do like a triangle, but half circle is what would work in a shawl. And I found a shawl that I thought would work well, but it did use bigger yarn. And I figured, well, that's fine because I could just keep going longer. So I actually did cast it on and started it, and it was worked in like 5 different sections. And I was like, well, I will just cast it on and I will do a little bit and see how I feel about it. And this is the first 2 sections. So if I do the 5 sections, it's not going to be nearly big enough. And then I would have to be figuring out how to adapt the pattern to make it bigger. Or I could pull it out and hold the yarn double so that it was closer to the weight in the pattern, which I believe is a sport. I'd have to double check on that. And that is a possibility. I don't entirely know what I want to do. And so it was one of those where it's like, okay, well, I had my doubts about this project with that pattern. Maybe I just need to put it away a little bit longer and keep thinking about it. And eventually I will think of what I want, of how I want to do it. So it's kind of a failed project only because it was going to be a super simple thing, and then I think I let myself overthink it. I waited too long to pick the pattern. I got my doubts in the pattern. I didn't really want to start the pattern once I did, and then I started it, and my doubts were kind of confirmed. It was like, wow, this is not going to work out how you want it to. Okay. So do you keep forging on and figure it out, or do you look for another pattern, or do you just call it a day on this whole concept? And I honestly don't know which one I want to do yet, which means it's not a great time to work on this if I don't know what I want to do with it. So it is not going to be continued right now. And I have the feeling if I don't continue it soon, it's going to start getting colder and I'm not going to want a watermelon shawl. So we'll see if that one even really gets made this year. I'm not 100% right now. And I'm not going to stress myself too much about making that particular pattern. If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. Maybe I will use those yarns in something else, and that is fine. All right, so that is all for active projects. I have been working a little bit on some of my year-long projects. One of them I was working on, I haven't really shown it month to month, is making teeny tiny little sweaters. Was making one a month, and I kind of just decided I need to zoom through the rest of them because I'm kind of over the project, but I'm not done with it. So it's like, okay, I have 4.5 sweaters left now. Maybe instead of letting myself take a month-long break in between each sweater, I just need to finish them. Because when it's a new month and it's time to do a new sweater, I'm not like, woohoo, I get to do a new one. I'm like, okay, I guess I have to do that. So maybe that just means I either, it's a project I can't just not do. So it's time to get it done. And then I have also been working on my anthology blanket a little bit. I'm a little bit behind where I want to be, but I'm also starting to consider having that be take a regular spot in the rotation and go a little bit faster. And I've gotten a couple more squares done on my Yorkshire crochet along, but not anything that's really kind of worth sharing at this point. I am 2 squares behind where I need to be this month if I want to catch up to where I want to be. And I do technically want to catch up to where I want to be. I thought I would be able to easily do those squares this weekend because I have a long weekend for me. I had 4 days, but the time for these particular squares that I thought would be there has not. So I got to kind of finagle and get those in, and I'm still going to get it. But we're just going to have to kind of focus in on some of these slightly more finicky projects. So the last project type thing that I have to talk about is my upcoming project. And with the watermelon shawl not working out, I debated between doing a sporty shrug or getting started on another Advent project. And as you can kind of tell by the fact that I'm holding it, I'm going to start another Advent project. I had finally decided what I wanted to do with this Advent. It is from a chick that knits, and the theme of this Advent was dark and dreamy. I got it in their deluxe sparkle base, and this was the last Advent calendar that I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. And then I had originally thought I would do a shawl. And then I kind of was like, yeah, but I can't really find a shawl pattern that I'd like. Maybe I'll look into a striped cardigan. And I found the Radvent Cardigan. I do not remember off the top of my head who it is from, but I will link it below. And it is a striped cardigan. I know I talked about this last time I recorded, where it stripes through the arms, and I bought the pattern, I've read through the pattern, and I had been delaying doing it because I was traveling last weekend. This weekend I am home. Next weekend I am home, but people are visiting. And then over 4th of July there will be a little bit of traveling as well. And I know some people might be like, don't say when you're out of your house. I never said my house is empty, so don't even think about it, people. But with me not necessarily being home, I feel like mini skein projects are not on-the-go projects. It is very difficult in my mind to do this and have everything, it's not going to be a self-striping cardigan. I have to count out the rows and do increases and row counts all at the same time. So it's one that I feel will take a little more focus. And so I kept telling myself, wait to start it until after the 4th of July. After you're a little more settled and you'll have more times that you are going to be home. And then I decided, why? I already have one project that I'm kind of pushing myself through that I'm not as excited about. Why force myself to work on something else I don't want to? So what I'm hoping to get done soon is these are all tied on here in order. Theoretically, this is the order they came out in. I may look back through my camera for the pictures to make sure I have the starting point correct. And I thought about rearranging them, but there's some where the colors are very, very similar. And so I think I might just make sure that they're like these two will probably be switched to have something in between them because they're very, very similar. And that way it'll all just kind of stripe since it's not going to fade. And I think based on the construction of the cardigan, it is a paid for pattern, so I don't want to give away too much. I'm thinking I can kind of break it down into half and half and only be working with half of the yarns at once. And then I just need to label them, like wind them up and label them. And then they could be in a bag because they're labeled 1 to 24 instead of being like this and having to wind them up because this is the only way I'm keeping them in order. So that is something that I need to organize to do. And I thought, you know, you have a 4-day weekend and you feel like you have so much time, and then the blocks that you thought you would have kind of chip away here and there, and that's kind of what's happened to me this weekend. So let me move this out of my way, and then we will talk a little bit more about life stuff and how my weekend has been chipped away. So going back 2 weeks ago, we did kind of a couple of things last time where I talked about projects that I might want to work on, projects that I was planning on taking to travel with, and then I did travel. So we drove from Idaho to California to visit family. I do have shorts out there with several little things, including just little bits of the scenery. So we drove down to Boomtown outside of Reno, stayed the night, and then drove through the Sierras the next day. And then when we came home, we did that all in one day, which is why there's not reels from that one, because not only did we do it all in one day, but I did a huge chunk of the driving that day. A lot of times my husband does the driving. This time I did it. But yeah, in California, it wasn't to go to Disneyland or anything like that. It was literally just hanging out with my family at my brother's house. They played games. I'm not a big game player, so whenever games were going on, I was sitting on the sidelines, knitting, hung out, talked. I spent a lot of time with my youngest because she loved her uncle's yard where he just has a lot of trees and dirt and things a 7-year-old would absolutely love. And then we got home. I only worked for 2 days, and then my husband was going out of town. He is still out of town while I am recording, but by the time this posts, he will be back. And so I took a few days off of work again so that I could stay home with the kids. And I'm partway through that time, and in my mind, I was going to get those 4 Yorkshire crochet along squares done. I was going to organize and start this cardigan and probably get through several colors. I was going to finish all of the projects that I had and block them. And then it was also recording and editing. And this morning I baked cookies and I made jam. And somehow in my mind, all of these things were going to happen blissfully in like a day. And there'd be all this time to just sit around and work on projects. And of course, nothing ever works like that. So like I made the cookies, and I'm so happy that I made cookies. We have like 26 jars of jam. So I will be sharing them with some other people in my life. And of course, having plenty for us. I may be ordering more jam jars because I made raspberry peach, blackberry peach, and then raspberry blackberry. I intended to have at least one like single flavor jam, but because I wanted raspberry peach, I then didn't have enough peaches left to make a straight batch of peach jam. So I combined the peaches with the blackberries, and then I had more raspberries left over, so I needed to use those, but then I didn't have enough to make a straight raspberry. So yeah, it was just kind of a little bit of a mess where I would have had enough to make 3 single flavors, but instead I just combined them all into 3 different ones. And then I just made chocolate chip cookies and baked some of them and then threw some trail mix in the rest of them because that just sounded good to me. And yeah, super simple. But, while you're doing 3 batches of jam and cookies, you cannot also be doing something else. And I think that's where my brain has just kind of been like, somehow I was going to clone myself and be in multiple places at once, and it just doesn't work that way. Then I also do have my middle child is volunteering at the library, so I was driving her to the library, picking her up. Yesterday when she went to the library, they had a craft activity that my youngest was excited about, so we stayed for that, which of course gave less time into the day. So like all these little things that have chipped away at the time that I thought I would have, they were all good things technically, but it was just more of that somehow in my mind I was going to do it all and it would take no time at all, and that's just not really how the world works, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, lots of good stuff, some relaxing. I've been thinking about making jam for a long time, and then I just don't. And so I'm happy I got to do that, and my little one was kind of both happy and sad about it because she's 7, so the idea of making the jam was exciting until she realized how much of it is just kind of put it on the stove and boil it and precise timing and then hot jars, and that's not all fun. But she is excited later when the jam is cool that we will have some jam to try. And I mean, I just kind of like the idea of making jam because I grew up with my mom who made jam, and I mean, we do buy store-bought jam here in our house. We don't eat a lot of jam, but I just kind of have that little soft spot for homemade jam. So I am definitely starting to babble. I have some editing to do and projects to work on, and hopefully some organizing of my projects to do so that I will be able to cast on and get that cardigan started this next week and get a little bit more on some of my projects. I'm really happy that I'm not letting the watermelon shawl not working out how I thought it would bum me out too much. But sometimes you just gotta go with the flow. I'm not always good at it, but I feel like today I'm doing okay with it, and I'm gonna take that as a huge win, and I'm gonna run with it and just try to let the rest of my long weekend be good. Try to stay chill for it, and I will see you all again very soon. Bye.